applied to tournaments as well. And the last one is a small blind spot. So it's a little funky, but maybe it'll help you if that's what you're thinking about. Anyway, I'm sure some more people will start strolling in eventually, but we can get started. Oh, there's somebody. Sherry, can you maybe, after that, can you turn that down a little bit, the alarm, the doorbell? Sherry?
Yeah?
Is it possible to turn the doorbell down a little bit, just during the presentation?
I'll try, but it's not really possible right
Okay. All right, well, gonna get started. Thanks everybody for coming. Like I said, I'm sure more people will come in, but that's okay. So today, what I'm speaking about is planning our hands, making a plan for every hand we play. I called it for maximum value. Maybe it should have said for maximum profit, but so the objective for today is, after this, I want all of you to have a better understanding of what your hand wants to do in every spot that you might face, and that all starts with categorizing hands. So we're gonna start by categorizing our hands at the first opportunity, and then from there we're gonna set a goal for every hand, and that'll guide our decision making throughout the hand. So let me go to my presentation.
By spot, do you mean formation, or do you mean street?
Like every street,
Okay.
every decision point. So I'll just start by introducing myself. My name is Ferderber. Some of you know that I won the VClub main event at the annual series a month or two ago. I've been a professional poker player for many, many years, more than 15 years. I play mostly live cash. I also play online. I've had some success in tournaments as well. I've been lucky. In the last 2 years, I've also been a professional poker coach. I mostly work with people one-on-one, and my philosophy for coaching is to meet students where they are and to help them get some takeaway that they can make money with immediately. So for today, like I said, most of my work as a coach has been one-on-one, so I'm very comfortable with discussion, so I encourage you guys to jump in anytime with any questions, any comments. It'll actually help me out, because this is my first time doing a presentation for a group like this. So, what else? Okay, so one thing I also want to help you guys do is to get an insight into what thinking like a professional means. And you know, a lot of the other discussions we've done at VClub have been about the poker theory, which is very important. To me, being a professional is about making money. And what I wrote there, like, our decision-making process should always lead to us finding the most profitable lines. In other words, I tend to emphasize results over theory. You start with the basis in theory, but in every decision that I'm making as a professional, I'm thinking, how do I make the most money here? Okay, so we're gonna move on to one of the biggest differences I spot between professionals and non-professionals, and something that keeps coming up with my students, is how recreational, semi-professionals, how they make their decisions street by street. I find most players are very reactive to the situation, meaning they get excited, they have a good hand, they see a flop, they wait to see what other people do, they wait to see how much someone bets. All their decisions are made street by street, as opposed to having their own objective for the hand, which is what I'll be talking about today. And I also find that most players, non-professional, are overly focused on deception. There seems to be a big preoccupation with being tricky, and I want to kind of move away from the idea that we have to be very deceptive with how we play our hands. We have to be very tricky. We have to make our opponent think something that isn't true, and more just how do we make money on every street. All these tendencies to me, they kind of mean that we're not in the driver's seat while we're playing the hand. We're waiting to see what happens to us. We're waiting to see what each hand does to us. So, what's the alternative? The alternative is to take charge of each hand, and it starts by thinking, what do I want to do with my hand? That can start pre-flop, it can start on the flop. You'll see, what cards you have, how they interact with the board, and then you should be thinking, what's the best possible outcome for me? What does my hand want in this situation? And sometimes it's best to be really optimistic. We talk about playing against our opponent's range, how our range interacts with the opponent's range. That's all good theory. You do want to understand that, but at some point in reality, we want to say, what's the best outcome I could hope for with this hand, and what needs to happen to achieve that? And I'm going to go into some concrete examples. So I'm going to pull up an example for us. This is a hand there we go. This is a hand that came to me from a student of mine. I've changed it slightly for this example, but I actually see this over and over again. So I'm just going to walk us through it. Okay, so in this hand, we have pocket eights in the big blind. You can see we're the hero in the hand. Our stack, we're playing 2-5 no limit cash game. And our stack is $500, that's the effective stack. So, in this hand, folds around to the villain in the hand, who raises to $25, kind of a standard raise, a little big, but that's common in cash. Folds around to us in the big blind, and we just call, we elect to call here. And the flop comes Jack 8-4. Great news. Okay, we flopped a set. This is pretty much the best outcome we could hope for. So, like I said, this was a hand that a student described to me, and I've heard this story over and over again. Student decides to check. Perfectly reasonable. Check to the pre-flop raiser. We call that checking in flow. It's just natural to check to the person who is aggressive before the flop. We check here. My student told me when he was describing this hand, was checking with the intention of check raising. Sounds like a good plan to me. So we check. Our opponent bets 45. That's kind of a big bet. If we look before the bet, the pot's 52. The opponent bets 45. Kind of surprises us a little. Okay, maybe we were expecting something small. My student now changed his plan. He decided, oh, this guy bet really big. Maybe he's strong, maybe he's bluffing. My student decided, if I check raise here, they're gonna know that I'm strong. I'm gonna give away my hand. So my student changed their plan and decided to just call. Okay. Turn comes out the 5 of hearts. It's a pretty good card for us. As long as our opponent doesn't have 6, 7 and just made a straight, we still have the second nuts. Should feel good. Student decides to check. Villain checks. Okay. River comes in ace. My student at this point decided once again to check. I asked them, why did you decide to check? They said, well, an ace came out, it's kind of a scary card. I figured if I checked here, my opponent will think I'm weak. They'll think I'm weak, so they're gonna bet. It's this whole deceptive line, this idea that we can change what someone else is thinking, which I've sometimes as a coach I realize it's very difficult to change the way people think, and I wouldn't ever try to do it in the middle of a poker hand. So we checked, or my student checked, and then the villain checked. This is a total disaster. Okay, we flopped a set, and all we won was the pre-flop money and then $45 that went in on the flop. I think we totally missed an opportunity here. So I'm gonna ask you guys, where did we go wrong? Anybody?
would say just betting out on the turn for sure. And if he had a plan, he could have stuck to it. Nonetheless, I don't think 45 is as much money in that hand as, you know, it wouldn't scare me off in any way. But I would have put something out on the turn for sure.
Okay, so
I would never have waited. Like you got to earn your money. You got to put something in. Even if he's got something that's nothing, well, he's probably not going to be putting money in on the river either. So why wait for the river when the guy who bet 45 on the flop already has some incentive, which is another card. So,
okay, so yeah, so Lauren said a lot there. He said, one, that the 45 bet, it doesn't really mean as much as we think. We overreacted to what we perceived as a certain size.
Yeah.
And two, you said you would have just let out on the turn.
Yeah, I wouldn't have re-raised on the flop. I mean.
But you would have taken an aggressive action at some point.
In every way, on the turn for sure, and on the river definitely.
Okay, that's good. And I saw a hand in the back. You were gonna say?
Yeah, I was going to say that deviating from the check raise was a mistake.
Yeah.
The jack and the 8 coordinate like very well together on this flop.
Yeah.
On the middle position. You got 9-10, queen 9, 6-7.
Absolutely.
6, like tons of straight draws that you could like charge and get value from.
Right.
And yeah, so I think that was the biggest mistake. On the river, that's something I would actually do when the ace comes to kind of check it to them to hope they bet out.
Thank you.
So
Thank you, an honest poker player.
The flop was the biggest mistake.
Okay, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you were gonna say something?
He pretty much just said everything
Okay.
I was gonna say. So
Well,
I agree with what he
I was gonna say
said.
player dependent
So-
for me on the river. Is
Yeah.
Depending on the player, yeah. Track to the goose, but also I can see it maybe for me like a big deck because it's like big tracks. Like what do they have left? Like it's ace king.
Okay.
I don't think it's king. Like they're gonna bet king, so it's like ace king.
right, they,
Or just something they're gonna fold.
that ace
Check
does
raise.
hit their range for sure. Okay, well, thank you guys. That's a good discussion. I really appreciate you saying that that is something you would have done, because I was gonna ask, like, how many of us have done this before? Which is just
Way too many times.
kind of overreact or just overthink a spot, you know? And like you said, probably the biggest mistake was just not check raising the flop. We had a plan at the start, and then our opponent did something that pushed us off of our plan. Okay, sometimes we do need to change our plan in the face of new information, but our opponent just betting $10 more than we might have expected isn't enough to get us to deviate from what we wanted to do. So, you guys have already actually covered a lot of this, but my slide says, let's see, what the student thinks they're doing. They think they're making a proper adjustment to a change in size. They think they're like being deceptive. They're trying to be tricky. You know, maybe they think at the end they're trapping. Like you said, when an ace comes, maybe that does hit an ace king, and player dependent, maybe if we check, they will bet. Yeah, against an opponent who's always going to bet an ace, but we don't know enough here to make that assumption. So we think we're trapping people. Here's what I think we're actually doing is we had no plan. We changed our plan on the flop. We had no plan for the turn or river. Our plan became, I hope my opponent makes a big mistake that I can capitalize on, instead of putting our opponent in a difficult spot where they will make a mistake. And I call this like rationalizing being passive, okay? We took the most passive line we possibly could. We checked 3 times, and at every step we had a reason that everyone can understand, but then at the end of the hand we look back and we realize it all went wrong. So that's the importance of having a plan. We already talked about this. Has this happened to you? And you know, how do you guys feel? How do you guys feel when you flop a set? You know, what's the feeling that you guys have on that flop or that turn?
Just on the 6-4.
Right. You get an emotional reaction, right? You get a strong reaction. So don't let your emotion, like, be aware of how you feel in each situation, but still go through the rational thought process. How am I going to make the most money in this opportunity? And it's, you know, again, I'm repeating myself, but it's not by laying traps. It's not by being tricky. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how to classify our hands. Before we have a goal, we need to understand what kind of hand we have. Okay, there's going to be a different goal for every hand classification. We can go through this a little quicker, but it's important to understand we classify our hand before we act. Okay, we don't think of an action and then justify it. We think, what is my hand? What are the goals for my hands? Then we're going to come up with an action. So first, we're going to go through just a couple different hand categories. You guys are probably familiar with these, but maybe you've never thought, on every flop, every pre-flop of categories in your hand. The first category, trash, junk hands. We all know what these are. When you're dealt one of these hands, you just want to fold it at the earliest opportunity. You fold them pre-flop, or some of these hands, maybe you see a flop and you don't connect in any way. Let's say you saw a flop with 9-7 offsuit, and the board comes ace, king, queen. You're just looking to fold these right away. We're not going to spend too much time on these hands. Bluff candidates, these are hands that have no showdown value. We can't bet them for value, but maybe we have a reason to believe, these are good bluffing hands. If we take aggressive lines, we can get our opponents to fold better hands. Does that make sense? Everybody familiar with bluffing? Draws. When we flop a draw, we should set an objective in our mind. Our objective should be to realize our equity, to see a turn or a river at a good price, and set ourselves up to make a big hand and win some money. I don't have examples of draws today, but we've all played draws. Understand when you want to categorize your draw as a draw, or if you want to move it into the bluff candidates, run a semi-bluff. And then I do have some more examples today. We're going to talk about showdown value and bluff catchers. I kind of put those two together. Does anyone know what showdown value means when we talk about a hand that has showdown value? Somebody knows. Help me out.
Generally, it's a hand that you can check down and win.
Exactly, a hand that you can check down and win. It actually doesn't have to be checked down, but it's a hand that can get to the river, get to showdown, and has some probability of winning. Maybe it's 30%, maybe it's 80%, but it's a hand that we reasonably expect to win some of the time when it gets to showdown. I kind of group that with bluff catchers, which is kind of a special category of showdown value where we think our hand has particular value in calling down our opponents when they might have value, but they're often will be bluffing. And then value hands, okay, like that set of eights that we just looked at. That's a great example of a value hand. Top pair, top kicker is a value hand. Anything that you can bet and expect to be called and still show down a winner, that's a value hand. So, first we're going to talk about value hands. When we have a value hand, okay, the theory is that we plan out how our hand plays against our opponent's entire range, right? So if you have top pair, top kicker, you might start off by betting small to get called by a large section of your opponent's range, okay? Even your opponent's weaker hands, you might not want to push them out right away. What I'm going to encourage us to do today, though, is what I call blue sky thinking, which is when we have a strong value hand, I want us to think, what is the best possible outcome in this situation? Like, what do I want? What's the most realistic but idealistic outcome for this hand? And what has to happen for me to reach that outcome? We can't just, like in the first example with the eights, we can't just check and hope that our opponent puts the money in. We've got to decide what actions we're going to take to maximize our profit. If you were here last week, Victor pointed out that in poker we make most of our money not by making these big crazy bluffs, but by making big hands and winning big pots. Okay, I had the outline done for my presentation before I saw Victor's presentation last week, but I think it's interesting that we both wanted to hit on that point because it's very, very true. So, okay, I have another example for us. So this is a hand that I played in Florida at a local card room where I'm a regular. This was a 2-5 game. I've been playing for a couple hours. We were pretty deep. I had about $2,000 in front of me. We were playing 2-5-10. So there's a straddle. In the straddle, there's a particular maniac. He still had about $3,500 in front of him. When I sat at the table, he had about $7,000 in front of him, and he was losing. He was playing most hands. I had called him down a couple times. I had won every time I called him down. Anyway, this was a good game. So in this hand, I'm dealt Queen Jack suited on the cutoff. My buddy Sam, he's a friend of mine, he's a professional. He was second to act, he raised up to $50. I know Sam is a great player, played with him many, many times. It folds to me, I got Queen Jack suited again, Queen Jack of clubs. And I could 3-bet here, definitely. I opted to just call for a couple reasons. One, I don't expect if I isolate my friend Sam, I'm gonna make a lot of money off of him. He's a good player. I'm not in this game to make money from Sam. I'm not thinking about, what's the theory here? How often do I have to 3-bet Queen Jack suited? I'm thinking, how do I make money in this hand? And I'm thinking it's by calling. Everybody else folds, and then the maniac in the straddle calls, which is what I wanted. I wanted him in the hand. If I raised to 150 pre-flop, I might be letting him off the hook. Okay, flop comes out. 10, 7, 5 of clubs. So I flopped a flush. So we can categorize this hand. What category is this hand? Value. Obviously value. So I'm gonna ask you guys what you would do, but I'll just run through the first street is straddle checks. My buddy Sam bet $70, that's about half pot. It would be totally reasonable for me to raise here. Similar to the pre-flop, my thought process was, if I raise here, Sam is aware enough to know that I'm making a big raise in a scary board with a maniac in the hand. I assume if I raise here, the maniac's gonna fold and Sam is gonna fold unless he's got a monster. So I made a decision in the moment to just call. I want to get as much money into this pot as I can, but I thought on this first street, I just want to call. I got surprised. Mr. Maniac here, kind of a whale. He makes a big check raise from the straddle to 300. Okay, this is good news for us, I think. My buddy Sam folds, okay? He can see what's going on. Now it's our decision with the Queen Jack. We're gonna do something a little different here. We're gonna take a little break. We're just gonna take a break for 2 or 3 minutes. We have 4 options, okay? We can call this check raise. We can do a small raise, like a min click. We can do a big raise, or we can jam all in. I'm gonna stop talking for 2 or 3 minutes. I'm gonna ask you guys just to turn to the person next to you, make a group of 2 or make a group of 3. Don't have to get out of your seats. And for 2 or 3 minutes, I want you guys to talk about all these options, figure out what you would do, what you would honestly do, or what you think you should do, and why. So we're just gonna take 2 or 3 minutes, quick discussion, and then we're gonna come back and I'm gonna survey. I think we're gonna get some different answers. So go ahead, guys, just turn to the person next to you, and these are your 4 options.
So you would call it. You think that Someone has an ace high or king high flush, you can take my money. I'm gonna try to do as much as I can. Because as much as the guy is let's look at what he's the best. He's the best flush he has ever
To get that.
the only way you're going to win this game, no matter how much information he is, is that they have to live here, and there's 10 different games of money. So I think you're right. Because there's nothing wrong with pushing. But I would exactly because it just seems like
I go on my
it's very rare. And there's so much opportunity. I mean, basically, when you can make money a little opportunity, maybe
Thank you so much.
it's pretty rare. You know, it's pretty rare. So, I agree with you. I would say it's a check. Because
Okay, guys, one more minute. Just one more minute. Finalize your reasoning.
But the downside is that we act first. No, he acts first. So he's
Okay, you guys are going really deep into this, but we do have to move on. So, okay, guys, I'm gonna survey the answers now. I wanted to say I think there's a good rationale actually for all four of these. I do think there is one answer that is better than all the others.
Okay.
This actually is a hand that I put in my newsletter. I do a free poker newsletter. It's a weekly newsletter that I publish about once every 2 months. But
What's a minute click?
but I did survey all my readers, and out of all my readers, I got pretty even answers for everything, and only 2 people got the right answer. So, or what I consider the right answer. So let's start over here. What'd you guys come up with?
Sure, go ahead. Ladies.
Go ahead.
I said either a call or mid-click.
Okay, and why?
Because if I did the math correctly, which I don't know if I did, if you raise to like 700 or something, then you'll have about 1-to-1 SPR on the turn. I think you can pile in the money on the turn. Even if it's like another club, like you might still be good there. But if they have a set, I don't know.
So a
like-
min click, and then we committed ourselves, and hopefully committed our opponent. And,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You
Play for
guys?
stacks there.
We go jammy.
You go jam?
Yeah.
Okay, why jam?
Go ahead. No, we talk about it. Well,
Mostly because I'm a less experienced player, my nerves get to me. My rationale would be, if he's willing to bet that much, he's willing to call him and click. He could be holding ace or the king of clubs, just hoping to get the 4th club. So it would be based on, I think, if he's willing to bet that, so it's a combination of bet size and nerves.
yeah.
Okay,
My-
so,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, my thought is, when he raised about 3,750, I think he's possibly have an ace clubs, but he doesn't have his set yet. He's trying to go in for a flush, and he has 4 out of 5 cards. That's what I was thinking.
Okay,
So if I jam, that he's gonna have to dig deep to get to that 5th card.
right,
So
make them pay.
make him pay.
So, and going back to what you said you think he's willing to call, but then you also talked about your nerves.
Yeah.
Well, can you tell me more about your nerves and how that factors into it?
I'd rather put the decision on him.
Ah, okay. So like, take the responsibility off get it over and done with for you.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Because I would have put myself down for investing all that thought process,
Right.
money, just to hit a
Yeah.
club on the turn, and then,
Sure, and then what are you gonna do?
because if he goes with a big bet on the turn,
You're gonna be
if
scared.
a club hits,
Yeah.
and it goes with another
A club
bet,
could hit, the
I'm gonna
board could
fold.
pair, lots
I'm
of
gonna
things could
fold.
happen. Okay, you know you're gonna fold. You don't wanna lose that equity, so make the decision over on the flop. Okay, and behind you guys?
We touched on everything except the big raise.
Yeah,
What Sherry said about the min click, we agree with. But we thought the min click was a little bit suspicious. And everything she said, we kind of get with the call, like we think we'll get it in on the turn.
okay,
Barring like, I don't know, something that scares us, we don't know exactly. And then we also did like the jam, cause it makes us look like we're drawing.
okay,
But we really think he's drawing because the queen, the jack, and the 10 of clubs was all accounted for, so that leaves the ace king of clubs specifically. But since he didn't 3-bet from the straddle, we're lowering the odds of that. So we really think he's on a draw. But we want to make it look like we're on a draw.
okay.
So we like jam too.
So, I like the thinking about, there's a lot I like there about, and you're thinking about like, the min click is gonna like keep him in, it's gonna set up a good stack to pot ratio. I like your thinking about the jam. The part I don't like is there's still too much emphasis on deception. There's still too much, if we min click, it's gonna look too strong, he's gonna get nervous, and if we jam, we're gonna look weak. I'm gonna give you my answer after, but there is just a right answer that it doesn't involve like tricking our opponent into thinking the wrong thing. But James?
I was just gonna say like,
Oh, James reads my newsletter, so he's seen this before.
yeah,
Right.
thankfully I forgot what the
Thankfully.
So
Deception.
it feels like there's a kind of a fine line between being tricky and just like, for example, your first play in this hand was to call,
Mm-hmm.
and you said you did that to keep people in the hand.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like it's kind of tricky.
That's
because you're-
true.
You're not betting the hand.
That's true, and I thought of this when I made this example, but it's less that I'm trying to play weak, you know, like I didn't go like, oh shucks, I'll call, like, it's not that I'm trying to make my opponent think something that isn't true, so much as I just wanted to leave him the opportunity to call. Because if I go,
Right.
if when there's 70 and I go 300 or 400, now it's a totally different ball game for my opponent, and all sorts of hands that he would have made a mistake by playing, it's now going to be easier for him to play those hands correctly.
It's like, I guess maybe you can think of it like at each decision point, there's like, you're trying to navigate a path through the different ranges that everyone has, and it's like.
Okay, that's
Like-
correct. But we can simplify
Like,
that
you-
by
you-
saying at each decision point we want to think about what does our opponent have, and so far you might have been the only one who came up with this. That like we need to think, what does our opponent go 300 with? What did our opponent check raise with? You know, and now we're thinking, what does our hand want to do against the hands that our opponent would play this way? Okay. So I'm just going to move on because we've only got about 15 minutes left. The correct answer is definitely, there's a good case for all of them. The correct answer is definitely to jam. Okay? When our opponent check raises to 300 after the pre-flop raiser bets, and after I stay in, and our opponent takes such an aggressive action to make a big check raise on a scary board, they are saying to us, I love my hand. He loves his hand. And we know he's a maniac. We've called him down a couple times and been good, so he's willing to put money in when he's not ahead. He's willing to gamble. So when someone loves their hand and you have the third nuts, basically, you can just jam. You can just go all in. We have a value hand. We want to think, when can we get the money in as soon as possible? It's on the flop. Something you guys brought up that is absolutely true is we don't want to see scare cards on the turn, okay? If our opponent flopped 2 pair or a set, and then the turn comes a 4th club, now someone who was incapable of folding that hand on the flop, they might now find a fold. okay? If a fourth club comes out, or I already said that, if a fourth club comes out, our opponent might get scared. If the board pairs or a fourth club comes out, we might get scared. You talked about that. You know, we have a queen high flush on the flop, we love our hand. Now all of a sudden on the turn, the board pairs or another low club comes out. Now we're gonna start second guessing ourselves. Well, does he have a bigger flush? So, if everybody can remember the spot, I already closed it, but what ended up happening is I did go all in the moment, and my opponent like snap called. He just had ace 3 with the ace of clubs, so he had no pair, he just had the ace of clubs. He wanted to draw to a flush, so that gives him, what, 7 outs? So we ran it twice, I won both boards, so that was a big $4,000 pot for me. It was a huge spot, I already wrote that, it's a huge spot, but by classifying my hand and understanding what my objective is, it actually kind of became easy for me to play. You know, it is a big spot. You know, my heart was beating a little bit. You know, when I first went all in and he snap called, I thought, well, I could be losing, and I could have been losing, right? He could have flopped a bigger flush than me, but I knew what I wanted to do with my hand. I wanted to get the money in. That's the point.
Sorry, Peter, would you play that hand any different live versus online?
Yes.
Tournament versus cash? Because
Yes.
I find people online are a lot looser
Yeah.
and willing to. You know,
Absolutely.
The game we play here is 120 buy it. Some tournaments online it's like $10. And
Yeah.
people are willing to.
Yeah, absolutely. So, oh, that's such a good question. I'm gonna run out of time, but
Okay,
no,
go
but
on with it.
but you've touched on something really important, which is you have to be able to classify your opponents, okay? And the way I classify opponents live is very straightforward. Like I just said, this guy's a whale, this guy's a maniac, he's gonna pay off. I just want to get a big hand. That brings up actually something else about being a professional, which is when you're at a table and there's a guy with $3,000-$4,000 and he's capable of losing it, you're in a race with everybody else at the table to win his money.
Yeah.
Like what if I just call on that flop, okay? Which it's not terrible. It wouldn't be terrible if he bet 300 and I called. But now the turn pairs the board, he check folds, I only won $300. You know, in the long run, it's not the worst play. But then what do you know, 3 hands later, my buddy Sam at the table, the other professional, he wins all that guy's money. And now there's no more money for me, okay? So that's why I'm talking about being optimistic, because when you have an opportunity in one moment to win $2,000, you just take it, you know? I didn't know what he had. I didn't know that he was gonna call. I thought there was a very good chance he would call if I went all in, and it worked. But to answer your question, yeah, if he was a professional, I would have to reevaluate the hand, you know? I would still think, okay, this guy loves his hand. I should really think about being aggressive here, but yeah, I might do a smaller raise. I might just call against someone who, you know, isn't gonna make as big a mistake.
$10 buy-in with 900 people.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be more cautious.
No, I jam here too.
Here's,
Yeah.
I played like 4 times live.
Right, I hear you. I hear you.
After 10 years.
But listen, that's a great question, and I'm gonna stick around if you guys want to ask me some more questions after, or if you want to subscribe to my newsletter. But we do have to keep moving. We've got about 10 minutes left, and I have one more example. But I feel like we covered a lot there. Good job. Good job, guys. Okay, let's talk about bluff catchers really quickly. I already introduced them. These are hands that are not strong enough to value bet. If we bet and are called, we assume we're gonna lose. Our opponent is not calling us with a worse hand. However, if our opponent bets and we think they're bluffing, we can call, okay? Here's something that's a little counterintuitive. When we have a bluff catcher, we want our opponent to be betting. If we're gonna take our hand to showdown hoping our opponent is bluffing, isn't it good for us if they keep betting and make a big bet? We're gonna win more. A lot of people, when they have these showdown value hands, they're like, oh, I hope I get a cheap showdown. Think about that. Whoops. Okay, so I have the example. This is a hand that I played about 2 months ago at Woodbine. It was about 6 in the morning, and it was about 6 in the morning. We were playing 5-10 with a mandatory $20 straddle. We were 6-handed, and the player in the straddle, who I've labeled as the villain, he had just arrived. I'd probably been playing with him for about 15 or 20 minutes. I'd never played with him before. He looked like a young professional. I made some assessments about him that he was good, that he knew what he was doing, but that he was likely to play his hands aggressively, maybe over-aggressively. And that factored into my decision making in this hand. I had been winning. I had a good stack in front of me of about $5,000. What else do you guys need to know? You know, there isn't a big difference in my mind between 1-3 and 2-5, and like poker is poker. I think there isn't a big difference between 2-5 and 5-10. But one difference that I have noticed is at the lower stakes, people are either way too passive or way too aggressive. Does that ring true for you guys? Have you guys noticed that? When I go to 5-10 and 10-20, people are still probably too passive or too aggressive, but the people who are too aggressive, they are a little more selective. So what I mean is, on the whole, they're gonna be betting probably more often than like they should in theory, but they're not just doing it blindly. It's not just every time someone checks to me, I bet. And this stuff factors into my decision making. It doesn't show up in the solver, but Peter's thinking about it. So, in this hand, I'm in the small blind. There's a $10 straddle and a $20 straddle. Or sorry, $10 big blind, $20 straddle. I'm in the small blind, I got ace-10, okay? This could be a value hand. I could raise it. But the thing about ace-10 is even if I flop an ace or I flop a 10, I don't really want to put in my whole stack or $3,000, you know, with top pair 10 kicker or a pair of 10s and an ace kicker. So I actually kind of made a decision before the flop to just call and play my hand as kind of like a bluff catcher, showdown value. The big blind calls, the villain raises to 120, you know, which kind of was a predictable outcome. I just called with my ace-10, 120. Big blind folds. So it's just the villain and I. We go heads up to a flop. 6-6 deuce, okay? I check, villain checks. Okay, anybody now, what is happening here? What do we know now about this hand? Anything?
I guess intuitively I'm like, no bad. But I mean, 6-6-2, like it's kind of good for callers range. So I'm kind of like, is this crazy? Is just checking back, or is it pot control? Is it super wide ranges?
Is what crazy?
That there's a check back. That equals check. I just don't. It's not like crazy.
That we checked or that he checked?
No, that he checked.
Is it crazy that he checked?
I don't know. I don't think so.
So what hands does he check? Just any. We're not going to get every single one, but what kind of hands is he checking?
Ace king.
Okay. Ace king?
Yeah.
Just hands like ours.
King, queen,
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like hands that have showdown value.
Hands that have showdown value. Okay. What are the best hands you would check?
Sixes.
Sure.
Pair of twos.
Yeah, he could have ace deuce.
Okay, so we go
Jacks.
pairs.
He could check jacks. I mean, he's pretty wide. He's still pretty wide.
Sure.
Okay, turn comes in 8. Okay, we check. Villain bets 180. Okay. Two things I want to know: what we think and how we feel. Let's start with what we think. What do we think his bet means? Yeah.
That he probably hit an 8 and doesn't want to see a higher card on the river.
He could hit an 8. He could have ace 8. He could have, I don't know, maybe 8-9 or king 8, and yeah, he's protecting his hand. That's possible. Anything else? Anybody else?
He saw we're not interested, so he's trying to get it for a good price.
He saw we're not interested, he's trying to get it for a good price. We've checked twice now, okay? And we just limped in pre-flop. We've been pretty passive, so maybe he's taking a stab. Is that what you're saying? Okay, these are all possible. Okay, wait, how do we feel? Feel horrible. Does anybody feel anything different than horrible?
I don't like it.
You don't like it.
I think we're actually okay with ace high.
You think we're okay?
Like, I'm not gonna feel like happy, like, I'm gonna feel anxious, because I always feel anxious when I play poker. but
Okay, I
it's
always
like
feel
a bit
anxious when I play poker. Okay,
but
great.
I think we're okay with ace high here.
Okay, yeah, so we don't love it. We're somewhere between anxious and horrible in our feeling, but intellectually we're thinking like, okay, ace high might be good here. What hands is ace high beating right now?
King high, queen high.
King high, queen high? Sure.
10.
So he has all these hands. He's wide. He has some value hands. He has some king high, queen high. Okay, so I decided to call. I felt okay in this moment. River comes a king. Okay, I don't know if I can think of a worse card, but that's the way poker goes sometimes. I wish it had been a deuce or another 6 or an ace. Wouldn't that have been nice? But I don't know. What do we do now? What do we do now on this board? We can check or we can bet. Anybody?
No.
Check. Does anybody bet?
Check.
Everybody checks, yeah?
I just blast 150% pop.
What do you blast?
150% pop.
Blast 150%. You're gonna bet 900 bucks.
Oh,
To what do we accomplish when we do that?
Get him to fold his 8.
Get him to fold his 8. Okay, so we accomplished something. I think if we bet 900 here, it's gonna work in terms of he's gonna fold a lot. It's something to think about. I did not do that. I checked. Now he bet 600. The pot was 600 and he bet 600. I'll just tell you guys how I felt. I'm a calm, in control poker player. When he bet 600, my heart started beating. I can remember it right now. I can remember sitting there at 6 in the morning against a guy I'd never played before. I have ace high, it's the river, he leads out 6, or when I checked to him, he bet 600. My heart was beating, okay? I didn't feel good. I was winning. I didn't want to punt back all the money that I had won, okay? I was playing in the bigger game at Woodbine. I didn't want to look like an idiot, okay? But I want to think about this rationally, okay? What hands does he bet $600 with on the river? Value? What's his value? What king?
King.
He could have king queen. He could have ace king. That was the first time Lauren said on the
Yeah.
flop. He could have ace king. So he could have a king. He could have aces. He could have pocket aces here.
A set.
Pieces.
He could have pocket aces.
Yeah.
What other value, guys?
King jack.
King jack. Yeah.
Even king 10.
Even king 10. Anything else? We've covered all the kings.
7-9 suited.
7-9 suited is a miss, is a bluff.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, he made a 123 flop. He could easily have ace queen or ace jack.
He could have ace queen or ace jack. Okay, so we're gonna wrap this up in 2 minutes, but here was my thought process in the moment is I definitely thought he could have ace king. I didn't think he could have ace 8 anymore. I think if he has ace 8 and that king comes, he's not gonna bet 600, you know? And I think he could have aces. I actually thought maybe he could have like ace 6 or 7-6. I think that would check the flop and then bet the turn and then bomb the river. You know, maybe if he has a 6 now, he might hope I have a king. But I had another thought too, which was that if he had like king queen, maybe he doesn't bet 600. Maybe he'd bet like 400. Maybe he'd bet 300. I feel like if he was bluffing on the turn and then he kind of gets bailed out on the river, he's not going to go for like the max. He's going to maybe put me on an 8 or pocket 7s and he's going to bet smaller, just trying to get called. I think an expert could bet 600. I wasn't sure this guy was like an expert. Anyway, I'll just tell you guys what happened. I felt like shit. I wished I'd had a different river, but I thought, you know, I played this whole hand as a bluff catcher. I decided pre-flop even to play it as a bluff catcher. And I thought to myself, you know, Peter, this is what you wanted. You wanted him to bet all these streets. So I kind of like grit my teeth and forced myself to call. I didn't love it, but I called. And luckily he had Jack 10 of hearts. So that tells us that he's probably just betting, unless there's something really special about Jack 10 of hearts on that board, which I have no idea what it could be. He's probably just betting all of his hands, 600 on the river. And remember at the start we said a wide range is a weak range. So if someone's gonna way over bet, it's okay for us to way over call. There's something else too that I want you guys to know. When you're playing against good players who find these aggressive lines, you can't always just wait for like aces and kings to trap. I wouldn't really say I was trapping here, but I took like a medium strength hand, and I decided to just let him like barrel into me with it. I think by categorizing this hand as a bluff catcher, I found a way to win an $1,800 pot, that there is no way to win an $1,800 pot like with ace 10 against jack 10 if I don't just let him take these. So things actually went according to plan. You know, we talked about making a plan. This hand actually went according to plan. I do like the 900 bomb on the river. That would have won a little less than this line, okay? Anyway, so that's a little bit more of a, yeah, please.
Sorry if I missed it, but what was it about like the hand and the situation from the very start that made you want to play it as a bluff catcher? Sorry if I missed that.
So I could have played it as a value hand. Ace 10 is good enough. Like, you know, blind versus straddle. I think if I raise pre-flop, he's just gonna 3-bet me with everything, and then we're gonna play for stacks with ace 10, which, you know, sometimes you have to do it. I just decided, like in this case, this guy's gonna overbet a lot, and I'll just let him overbet. Now, if the flop, if the turn had come a king and the river had come a queen, I probably give up, because even though I still would have been beating jack 10, that's like the only hand I'm beating. So I'm not saying that I decided like before the flop or on the flop, no matter what happens, I'm calling down everything. But I think we used both our plan from the start and logic throughout the hand to determine that our hand was good a lot of the time. Okay, guys, I had a teeny bit more, but the tournament starts in 3 minutes. Does anybody have any questions or anything?
Would that be a GTO play to start?
Sorry?
Is that still a win play, small blind, big blind? I know it's not GTO, but it's just a straddle, I guess. But like,
You know
even
what?
If you were going by theory, would it still be?
God love you for asking that. So I try to not look my hands up in GTO Wizard because I don't know my opponent's full range. But I've discussed this hand at length with some of my colleagues. I talked about this hand for about 45 minutes with a friend of mine, and he insisted on putting it into the solver. And I don't know how this could help anybody, but ace 10 is a mix in the small blind. It sometimes calls, it sometimes raises. So, but
it's a rare hand too, and a rare result too, correct?
yeah, this isn't common.
This is very uncommon.
But what I want you guys to understand is this was a big spot that was very uncomfortable. I'm sure a lot of people here have never called $600 on the river with ace high, but by having a plan
Right.
and categorizing my hand, that actually guided my decision making and makes these big spots easier to play. I also want to state that I did not know what he had. When he turned over jack 10, I didn't slam down my ace 10 and go, I knew you were bluffing. I didn't know. He could have turned over ace king. This wasn't a soul read. You know, this was like a logical decision where I thought I had the right price to call.
Did you go through combos still and stuff like that?
I went through some combos. You should always go through. We just did it.
Right.
Guys, we just did it. And whatever, like if we just counted, say, 25 value combos, knowing that he does this with jack 10, he's got to have like 100 bluff combos. So we're getting more than, well, let's say 60. We're getting more than the right price.
Great hand, Pete.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate you guys. takeaway, every hand, start by categorizing your hand and always think, what do I want to achieve with this hand? That's it. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank
you.
Let's go!
Thanks, guys.